is a fabulous conversation between myself and the wonderful Greg Pattillo. Unfortunately, during this conversation, my camera didn't record. I thought I knew what I was doing with technology, but obviously not. So you won't be able to see me, but you will be able to hear me and you will be able to see Greg. I hope you enjoy it. So I am, well, excited, nervous, over the moon, all the rest of it, to be able to talk to my guest today, who is just an absolute flute legend. He really needs no introduction, I don't think, if you're a flute player. But if you don't know who he is, then he is really the father, let's call him the father of beatboxing. He's also the member of a fabulous trio called Project Trio, who we'll talk about a little bit as well. And yeah, it's just my great pleasure to talk to the fabulous Greg Pattillo today. How are you doing, Greg?
Good. How you doing? Thanks for
Good.
having me.
I'm really well, thank you. Thank you so much for taking a bit of time to chat, because when I started doing this, this is like my third one that I've done. Your name just popped in my head straight away, and I was like, shall I ask him? Shall I ask him? Yeah, go on, let's ask him. So it's really cool to chat to you about everything music and everything else in between.
Awesome. Great to be here. I got a
Hmm.
lot to say, probably.
Okay, yeah. So, for those who don't know who you are, do you just want to give us a little bit more? Maybe talk a bit about what you're up to nowadays, because I think it's fair to say you've been around for a while doing what you do.
Yeah, I'm kind of well known for putting up some YouTube videos
That's
about
right.
15
Yeah.
years
Yeah.
ago, doing beatbox flute. But actually, I started playing flute like in the fourth grade, like straight up school band class. Didn't know anything about music, don't come from a musical family, but got into it, got some lessons, liked it, got into conservatory. I
Mm.
studied in Cleveland and kind of yo-yoed around the States until I put up these videos. And for the past 15 years, I've been able to be a professional flute player, and I've traveled all around the world performing this weird thing I've put together with beatbox sounds and flute playing, and both solo and with my group, as you said, the Project Trio, where we were kind of a classical crossover group.
Mm.
So we pulled from a lot of our conservatory education and then took that all apart and tried to make things funky or weird or original music. We composed, and that's been going strong. I had a great success until this pandemic rolled around.
Yeah.
That's really put a cap on a lot of performers. It's hard to travel and stuff like that. And
Mm.
we've had some personnel changes in the trio since then. And so here we are, a couple, 3 years later, and
Oh God.
we're getting back to work. Certainly, I've used my time over this kind of pandemic break. I'm a family man.
Mhm.
I got a wife and kids, so I've been home. Normally, I'm traveling a lot. That's been delicious.
Mm.
But also, I've kind of been like hitting the books, if you will. I've kind of been in like beatbox school. And every beatboxer I've ever met has learned not from their teacher,
Mm.
not at school, not at conservatory, but from YouTube.
Yeah.
And YouTube is such a great resource that I didn't have as a child.
Mm.
And funny enough, it's part of my success as a musician. But YouTube is totally different now than it was 15 years ago. And there are so many great resources out there. And I've been studying kind of extended beatbox techniques. When I grew up, beatbox was like the Fat Boys. And maybe it started getting interesting with like Rozelle with the Roots before they were a TV band. He was with them. And now beatboxing is kind of, some people have dubbed it the new school. And it uses all of these crazy techniques that, as an old man, I'm trying to take in and be able to do and be able to talk about it. And I'm thrilled at the progress, although it's so slow. It's like changing your embouchure
Mm.
slow or flute
Mm.
tone slow. It
Mm.
takes a really long time to get these little finicky sounds to sound and work right. But I'm delighted to notice that the work I've been doing with beatboxing
Mm.
really informs my flute playing from a classical nature.
Yeah.
And so, what I've been doing performance wise around town is I've actually memorized a little Baroque flute set. I
Mm.
play the Bach A minor partita
Okay.
and all 12 Telemann fantasies
Wow.
in a row without stopping. It takes 1 hour. I have the whole thing memorized, and I do that
Oh my
twice.
gosh.
And I do that in the
Wow.
subways for tips.
That's
And that's what I
amazing.
did this morning. I like woke up, made my kids lunch, took them to
Oh
school,
gosh.
played my set twice in the subways, ran my 4 miles in the park, and now we're hanging
Oh
today.
wow.
So I've been trying to deal with like really fantastic, what I think is fantastic classical flute tone,
Mm.
which isn't something I'm known for and don't generally outreach. It's just something that I really like. And
Yeah.
I've always loved these Telemann fantasies. I don't
Mhm.
know,
Oh God,
they're,
I adore them. I really,
but they are just fantastic works.
yeah.
And this Bach A minor, of course, everybody
Mm.
knows this
Mm.
partita. It's 300 years old this year. Well, they don't really know like when it was written, but they
Well,
say
yeah, yeah. We think
1723
they think whoever
when it
they
was written. 300 years. That's
Yeah.
pretty cool.
Mm.
So that's what I've been up to. That's where I'm kind of from.
Yeah.
Uh, and I would just say, man, I'm really into education. So if you got questions, or we could throw this at all into people watching that want to learn
Mm.
more about this stuff, and that's something I'm really passionate about.
Yeah. Well, you've just mentioned so many things that I want to pick up on, but one of the things that I really wanted to dig into was what makes you keep going, because you have been doing this for a long time, and it's, we all go through periods where we think, oh, am I getting anywhere? Am I doing anything? But you've just alluded to it by saying, you keep working, you keep finding these new things, and it takes a long time to perfect them. Do you think it's that really keeps you wanting to do it?
Absolutely.
Mm.
I've had troubles staying focused,
Mm.
both non-professionally before
Yeah.
I was a professional
Yeah.
and as a professional, because before you're a professional, you're trying so hard or whatever it is you think you need to do to rise to this
Mm.
level. And
Mm.
sometimes you can have a really defeatist attitude. I'm never going to get it. I'm never going to get there.
Mm.
And then in my experience as a professional, then you have to do work. It's not always what you want to do.
Yes. Yeah.
You have to do what is contracted to
Mm.
do. And so then you're playing a lot, but maybe not always what you really want to
Isn't
do.
that funny? And it's I think when you don't have the work and you're just going, well, what do I do now? It can feel defeatist. And then when you're working and you think, well, I haven't got time to do the things I want to do. It's that absolute double edge, isn't it? Finding the
Absolutely.
balance is very difficult. I think most people would say that if they're honest, that it's just you sit in the middle somewhere and you find the things that keep you going.
For me, one of the things though that has always kept me going is performance. I love performance,
Yeah.
and a lot of people put performance on this high pedestal, and
Mm.
maybe rightly so. If you go to see a performance, you want it to be good, and
Yeah.
if you're the performer, you want to be good. But you need places to practice performing, or like low key performance opportunities. And
Yeah.
when I was young, I used to just try to find the parties where I could bring my flute to.
Hmm.
So then late night when I was getting crazy, I was getting crazy on my flute. And,
Yeah.
and that was
Yeah.
something to look
Yeah.
forward to. That was
Yeah.
different than what I was studying. It was very social.
Mm. Mm.
It's fair to say I don't party as hard now as I used to do. But part of me, I get that out now. I still go into the subway and perform.
Yeah.
And it's fine for money or fine for memory and all this, but to be down in the tubes
Yeah.
and blowing for a stranger and making a moment happen with some
Yes.
vibrato and
Yeah.
magic, and seeing someone just be touched by it
Oh, and
really tickles me. And
yeah,
so
I do
that
totally get it.
really drives me forward,
Mm.
to want to be able to be in a position to do that, to
Yeah.
supply that. I'm a little bit addicted to it, to
Yeah.
making
Yeah.
the magic with the music happen.
Yeah. No, I get what you're talking about. And there's two things there really. My mind's gone off two tangents and I'm trying to remember which one I want to go with first. Um, the whole thing about connecting with people and like you said, perform like doing it in the parties and then now going in the subway. It's that being able to connect with people, isn't it? And I talk to people a lot about this. I think when when we have the traditional setup of say a concert hall or whatever, there's almost this artificial barrier, isn't there? There's this kind of almost this feeling of there's the audience and there's the person performing. And as much as possible, just breaking down that barrier where it doesn't feel like it's them and us. It feels like we are sharing that experience together, and which is exactly what you're talking about there, is so important, I think. And to me, it comes down to thinking of it as a whole, to not thinking of us and them, and to making it an homogenous thing, like a party. Everybody's relaxed, everybody's together, in the same boat, um and I think I've certainly been, I do the live streaming thing every week, and it's not quite the same because you can't see people. That freaked me out at first. That
Yeah.
really freaked me out.
Hmm.
But finding a way to connect through just talking to people, and chatting, and getting that is just, it gives it a different dimension, doesn't it? Rather than just saying, here I am, I'm playing my notes, and you can enjoy them. I don't know, there's something else there.
Definitely. And through performance, I've done, big stage stuff, small divey stuff. And
Mm,
what resonates with me is the concept of chamber music. And
mm,
as a concert goer, I prefer chamber music to larger
okay. Mm,
scaled works.
mm,
And old school chamber music, a string quartet wasn't just
mm,
done on a stage, it was done in a
mm.
parlor, at a
Exactly.
party,
Yeah,
or at some
yeah,
cat's like
yeah,
happening, you know
yeah.
what I'm saying? And
Yes,
so then
absolutely.
it is an intimate mix of
Mm,
music.
mm.
It, however, is hard to, if you want to be a musician these days and you don't have like a king supporting you or something like,
Yes, no, they're
then
few
you
and
gotta
far
like
between, aren't they?
do what you got to do to play work. But
Yeah.
that intimate thing is a wonderful thing to aspire to.
Yeah, and that kind of leads me on to the whole concept of classical music. Now, what you've just said is so brilliant. It's one of the things I always think about a lot nowadays when we're talking about how classical music is done now and how it was done, and our relationship to it. And that, what you've just said about it, wasn't performed in concert halls. It was performed in people's houses,
Right.
big houses, but it was performed or people did it themselves, right down to people who just had a piano, or they had basic instruments or whatever. So it just makes me smile, because there is still this feeling of separation, isn't there, a lot of the time, between classical music and other music. And at the end of the day,
Yeah.
it's just music, and the fact that you're going out and sharing that, like you said this morning, with the Tell 'Em in the Bar, people will just lap that up, because people love this music. People love it. They just don't know how to get into it. That's my
Some people love
experience.
it. I can always tell who's gonna love it though. It's usually
Yeah,
older
yeah.
people.
Yeah. I bet that's an interesting one. But in general, you're going to find that people are very receptive to it, I think, in that,
Yeah,
because they see it just as music,
yeah,
you know.
definitely. Yeah,
It's
yeah. A lot of people have no idea that. Yeah, exactly. It's just
yeah,
music.
yeah,
It's magic for a lot of people. People have no idea what the heck's
yes,
going on there.
yes, yeah, yeah. Interesting, isn't it? And I, you said about education. Anything, I think, we can do to share that with more people, and to share it with people growing up, and saying, look, you can, vice versa, you can do these things. If you're somebody that plays traditionally a classical instrument, you can play pop, you can play rock. If you're a guitarist, you can play the classics. It's nothing's
Oh
off
yeah.
limit, is it? And I think that is still a barrier that I come across in certain groups.
Yeah, well, I mean, I get it, like in the sense that most of us that move on in life with music probably found a teacher at some point. And usually, then the apple doesn't fall from the tree. You do what your teacher says or what your teacher said,
Mm.
and then you think that's what you ought to teach your students. And that's fine. It's been like that a long time. But now with the internet, God, I wish I had the internet when I was a kid.
Oh yeah.
Like, to be able to just call up any tune's changes, listen to any the resources now. There's really no excuse. If you have an interest in another genre of music, you can definitely get your toe wet, if not just jump right in,
Yeah.
and learn so much. For all of you out there that have found in your lessons, like, oh, I wish I knew how to rock out, or how to be improvisational, or how to sound like, this style of music that my teach. You can learn now. You can learn yourself. You
Mm.
can teach yourself. You can be totally surrounded by these sounds. Um, and for those of you who are hesitating to do it, I want to give you a green light to do that.
Yes.
Like, these instruments don't play themselves.
Mm.
They are not locked to a genre.
Mm.
They're only as interesting as you are
Yeah.
willing to be interesting with it. So get to work, man.
Absolutely. Yeah. And
Dive in.
it's about listening, isn't it? And I think in our traditional way of teaching, It sounds funny, and people who are not in this world will probably go, "What?" My view now is that people don't listen. We're
Oh
taught
yeah,
to
well, certainly not
read
wind
the
players.
notes on the page, but are we actually listening to the sound we make? And you've just hit the nail on the head there. Go and it's about listening. Go and listen, and
I had a kind of a funny thing when I grew up. I studied this. The lessons that my mom got me were with something called Suzuki.
yeah, okay,
You know
yeah,
what Suzuki
yeah,
is?
yeah, yeah.
Which is a wild form of teaching.
Mm,
But long story short, they don't give you the book. They
mm,
just teach you by ear. And
yeah,
so before I even knew better, I learned everything by ear at a young age. And I got to say, I use it all the time now.
yeah.
Way more than my reading
Mm,
skills. I use my
mm,
listening skills way
mm,
more.
yeah, and I do think,
Especially outside of flute, I do a bunch of
yeah.
music like on the computer, audio engineering type stuff, and
Mm,
almost never the stuff with that is done with sheet music or
yeah,
reading. It's
yeah,
all listening.
yeah, absolutely. Well, since I've like done more improvising myself and started doing covers and things, a lot of that is just done by ear, and it really, yeah, it makes you realize what you don't know as well as what you do know.
Oh, yeah.
Um, but yeah, no, I definitely am a big advocate for people, developing their ear before anything else, because that's where it's at, really, isn't it? Um,
Yeah, I for a second there, I was studying violin. I got a violin
uh,
maybe 7 years ago. I
mm,
love the violin. I wish I played
mm.
the violin, but I played.
I wanted to play a string instrument, and my mum was
Um, and uh, and my family hates listening to me play it, and the
right.
violin is absolutely terrible until you've been playing for 20 years, maybe.
Yeah.
Or you're a genius. But let me tell you, you can't get away with playing a non-fret string instrument without listening. And we
Mm,
get so lazy on these wind instruments
mm,
because you press a couple of buttons, supposedly an A comes out, but
mm,
that's not always the case.
yeah.
And isn't it wild, man? All these string players, if you look at it from an orchestral background, they spend their entire life micromanaging the smallest positions and pitches, only to sit in a sea of them. And then you got these wind players that are like, this is an A, and they get all these solo parts. And then you got like these wild intonation discrepancies and tonal discrepancies because like the wind players actually don't listening is like, oh wow, they listened, it's like bonus. I don't think you can get very far in the string world without critical ear,
That's
I
pretty
think.
true. Yeah. 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 No, I think you're bob on there. Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting, isn't it? Cool. So there was a couple of things I wanted to ask about. Well, we've talked a bit about the classical stuff, but I wanted to ask about your love of Jethro Tull, because I'm pretty sure I heard once that you used to play the beret, Jethro Tull's beret, quite a lot, and you had that down, and you were like, yeah, I could, that was one of the things that you really studied to try and get that style.
Oh yeah, well,
Mm,
I still play it every
mm,
chance I get with the
yeah,
trio because like
it's
old
amazing.
people love it because
Yeah,
it was like rock and roll back in the day. Hey,
exactly.
for those of you that don't know, he like kind of on the first album they did the beret. It's like a guitar beret, but they kind of add on flute and kind of made it funky, and it's super cool. And you should go listen to his version.
Mm,
And when I was a teenager, I'd asked my mom if she knew. Again, I didn't have access to music unless it came over the radio or my friends were talking about it.
mm,
I was like, "Do you know of any cool flute music?" And she knew of a rock band from her youth. And these guys, their 25th anniversary tour was in like 1992 or
mm,
92 maybe. And I
amazing.
saw it in Seattle. It was the first rock show I ever saw. I was a sophomore in high school, and it blew my mind. I'd never seen like such a crazy mix. First off, in the audience, young people, old people, and they were all partying real hard in the audience, biker dudes, and it was just an awesome show. Back then, Ian Anderson, main dude, he's known for singing, guitar playing, harmonica playing, flute playing, and he like danced on stage. He had a really flamboyant style, and he's still around today and still
Yep, yep,
performing.
still
A
touring.
little
Yeah.
less physical,
Mm,
but he's got such a crazy, so much music that he's written over the years. And
mm,
so, I used to try to emulate his sound a lot. And in order to do that, I also picked up the harmonica at one point in high school. And I find that the way you can rock back and forth on a harmonica, because in and out
Mm.
on one hole is a different note.
Okay. Yeah.
You get like a breathing pattern,
Mm.
in, out, in, out, out, in,
Yeah.
out,
Yeah.
in, out, like, and all of a sudden I was doing that on the flute, and it came from trying to. I was studying his style just by
Mm.
listening,
Mm.
playing his instruments, and
Mm.
I figured, yeah, and so I've turned that into a whole thing that I call like rhythm flute. I have a
Yeah.
whole concept of like how to tongue and articulate in a breathy way. It's kind of like a head voice concept of flute playing, which is very opposite from what we're trained classically, which is a chest voice, diaphragmatically driven resonant sound, but instead something that's up here caught with the voice, but still very resonant, but different. And he does this so well, and I just jacked that whole style and have been running with it and got a lot to say about it. It's really hard to notate this style.
Mm.
There's all these different ways that he articulates or breath articulates, and you just can't
Yeah.
write that
Yeah.
down. So you can write the pitches, but a lot of in the jazz world, if you ever study Charlie Parker and his Omni book, it's very similar. You can
Mm.
only write the pitches and
Yeah.
slurs and maybe tenutos and accents, but you got to listen to him play to hear the nuance of what's
Yeah.
happening. And for me, that's our flute guru of the non-classical style.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's really interesting to hear you talk about where you developed yours from, because I think a lot of the time people get what Ian Anderson does and beatboxing, kind of put it together, don't they? And it is very similar, but
Yeah,
he doesn't quite do what you've done. You've kind of taken it that that
yeah, yeah.
in
Well,
slightly different direction. That's all. There are similar. There are very
yeah, yeah. Well, check it. I have definitions for everything, really.
yeah.
I mean, like rhythm flute is a
Mm.
large umbrella. It's
Mm.
playing the flute not just like with beautiful sonority, but
Mm.
maybe you're subdividing and breathing in certain ways that are non-traditional. And in that, a small slice is beatbox on a
Yeah.
flute, because it's hard to do beatbox in different genres. It ends up then having a
Mm.
beat and then sounding hip hoppy or electronica-y.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
like beatbox flute kind of ends up being a little genre specific
Yeah. It's more
because
like a
of the
specific
way
skill
you
set,
end up
isn't it?
marking time.
Yeah.
But rhythm flute can encompass a lot, and you can
Mm.
even hear these concepts like on Bansuri flute,
Mm.
like
Mm.
Indian flute playing and things like this. This overblown, breathy sounds,
Yeah.
and like yeah,
Yeah, it's
it's a
more
much
using,
bigger umbrella. The
extending the
rhythm
tone,
flute
isn't it? Yeah, using
flute.
the tone in a different way. And I think what you've already said about it being so beneficial for classical players is so true, because it just widens out the palette of sounds that you can produce. Um,
Oh
and
yeah. Well,
you
and
can
oh, sorry.
go
Please
on.
go.
No, go on, go on.
Well, the beatboxing really informs different parts of the air system that
Mm.
I think. So check this out on the flute. I mean, you can't see anything you do. You can't see your fingers. You can't see your face. You can't see your throat.
Yeah,
You can look in the mirror, but then you still can't see inside of your body.
yeah.
And so everything that we do is informed by these weird images you
Mm.
make up, or it's
Mm.
kind of like this, or it's sort of like
Yeah,
this.
it's the
And it's
same
very
with
hard
singing.
on
I
a
mean,
daily basis to chip away at these skills to
yeah.
remember where you were the day before, right?
It's tricky, yeah. I mean, I've been teaching singing for many years, and it's exactly the same thing. You've got to find some way of, how do we feel what's going on inside? It's really the feeling, isn't it? Some people think of it visually, some people, have
Right.
certain images or whatever. But yeah, it's what's going on inside. And I think as flute players, some people never really think about that. Here's the instrument. Well,
Right.
yeah, but that's not going to do a lot unless you know what you're doing in here.
That's right.
Mm.
And in order to be able to do, and we should do some of these since you're a singer. Do you do any of the singing beatbox stuff?
Ooh, what were you thinking? Um,
Well, like throat bass or chest
Oh,
bass
no,
or
I've not quite got into
bass
that stuff
or
yet.
oh right.
That
Well, like
because
or
it's like you said, it's more closing off the throat, isn't it? Which is
well,
tricky.
there's the epiglottis closes off
Mm.
the throat, and the soft palate can actually close off the nose or the mouth or
Mm.
both. And
Mm.
so resonating both of these places, which are constrictions,
Mm.
so to play the flute, like right, like you don't blow hard.
Yeah.
It's like a air pressure game,
Mm.
right?
Mm.
Like the flute is a unique instrument of all
Mm.
other instruments,
Mm.
right? You don't blow, you do an air pressure thing. And
Mm.
so there's different air pressure resonances. And it's even, I think, different than singing in order for the flute to work. And so using those places. So like, let's see if I can just pull it up. But like, ooh, like it drops an octave, and that's
Yeah.
throat bass, right?
Yeah.
Which is entirely like soft palate
Oh,
driven,
okay.
or like, which is like the Yoda, that kind of thing,
Yeah,
is
blocking
is
everything.
is epiglottal, and then inhaled is like chest bass inhaled. And so in order to even be able to do these sounds, you need to know these
Mm.
constriction points and how to resonate in them. And once you do, you can fix all these flute issues. Well, there's so many right ways to play the flute, so it ends up being, who do you prefer to sound like? But in order for me to get to who I want to sound like, I need to own all of this stuff that happens in my chest, in my throat, and behind my nose.
Mm. Yeah. So many things that I think people, well, we don't spend enough time thinking about really. Um, but it's
Oh yeah.
very interesting. It's very interesting. Which leads me on to another great question, because I enjoyed working through your method book
Oh,
a while
right.
ago when it first came out. Uh,
Yeah.
and I thought there was going to be another one, Mr. Patillo.
Well,
There's
there
going to be
is,
another
I
one.
mean, yeah, there is going to be another
When he
one. I
finds
don't
the
know if
time.
you know what happened, but that book came out and then we had a pandemic. And so,
True. Yes.
and so now, though, I've learned a bunch of new sounds. And the hardest part is making it kind of go step by step,
Yeah.
but still having it be cool.
Mm.
Because,
Mm.
like, really easy stuff
Mm.
doesn't sound very cool. And then if it's methodical, like it took the most time of this book that I made, this was just using 5 sounds.
Right. Yeah.
Those are the 5 sounds:
Mm.
outward B, outward TS, inward TS, outward K, inward K.
Yeah.
And those are like really vanilla beatbox sounds. And I made a pretty long book. So like,
Mm.
but
It's great, and I love it.
but there are other sounds I need to use and want to talk about, and I just don't know how far to go. But
Yeah.
I have a couple of different concepts I'm playing with, and hopefully within this year I'll have it out. I
Oh,
mean,
cool.
it's just kind of dialing it in.
Yeah.
Ideally, this, man, if I really did it right, the songs in there was what I would
Mm.
perform all the time. But in order to have them be at performance level and have the audience love it, they
Mm.
need to be rather complicated sometimes.
Yeah.
And then they
Yeah. And it's,
become not only hard for other people to, like, I like talking about circular breathing, but it's like no one can circular breathe. And it's like, okay, well, like,
oh,
and that looks really
I,
silly in a book.
I
Like, you
taught
can
myself to do
take,
that at one point. I've never quite mastered playing with it, but I've got the kind of the thing
well,
down.
all these concepts are like, there's
Yeah.
the concept,
But where
go
do you go?
practice it for
I know, and that's what
years,
it comes
and
down
then
to.
come back and sound awesome. It's
That's what I was
hard to
about to
kind of,
say. Yeah, it comes. I can understand what your predicament of, like, which direction do you go and what do you include and things, but then you're right. It comes down to every little bit takes a lot of practice, and just kind of continuing to do it.
yeah.
Before you can kind of get it down, and that's yeah, it just takes time, doesn't it? Yeah,
It really does. Nice thing about beatboxing is you always bring your mouth everywhere, so you can
that's
always
true.
work on these sounds.
Mm,
But
mm.
yeah, there's a lot of sounds to learn.
Yeah, yeah, but it's great to see that you're still finding them and still finding a way to work with them and incorporate them into playing. That's really exciting.
Absolutely, man.
Mm,
There's so many great artists out there. You guys got to.
mm, mm. Yeah, yeah, no, that's amazing. One random thing I have to ask you about, because this is something that me and my community go on about a lot. Well, they'd like to talk about me doing it anyway. I love tea. My beverage of choice is Yorkshire tea because I'm here in
Okay.
Yorkshire. So I had to ask you, what's your beverage of choice, and is it tea?
I'm drinking tea right now.
Oh, of course. I didn't clock that.
It's a. This is though like a chai tea.
Like nice,
Like a
nice.
black tea with
Good
spices, and
chai.
then
Yeah,
I add
yeah.
almond milk and honey. But
Nice.
I drink tea, and I drink coffee. I drink probably I drink a ton of coffee, a ton. This
Yeah.
is 20 ounces.
Wow.
So this is bigger than a pint. I would drink maybe 3 of these of coffee a day
Oh, wow.
or
That's
so.
quite hardcore.
Well,
Keeps you
it
going.
keeps me going.
Exactly.
Yeah, I've always been a coffee drinker ever since I was, in high school.
Yeah.
I grew up in a very coffee city. Seattle,
Mm, mm.
Washington is like
Okay.
where Starbucks came from.
Yeah, yeah.
It always rains there, and it's really crappy gray weather. And
We can
so,
relate to that over here.
oh
That's
yeah, so you
yeah.
need a big
Need
caffeine
it. Yeah,
stimulant. And coffee was the way. So,
absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah.
a big cultural thing out there.
Yeah, yeah. Cool. So, when it comes to, because I've heard somewhere that you wanted to be a classical player, and you said,
Yeah.
you've said about your background and stuff, and that you would prefer chamber stuff. Do you think you would have gone down the classical route if you'd have had the opportunity to get in a full-time position, or
Yeah. Oh yeah. Definitely. I mean, that's what I was trying to do. I
yeah.
even got so far as I got hired to play in China in an orchestra
Mm,
for a summer, and they gave me the job, and I walked away.
wow.
They were pretty pissed that I walked away. But I did. I walked away
Okay.
because like I wasn't sure. Like I had a lot of room for growth. I still felt, and I don't know. I've always had this like classical or non-classical, but
Okay.
um, I listen to classical music. I listen to the radio, and there's a great local NYC radio classical station. And what is it, BBC Three? Which one's the
Okay.
classic?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
listen to them. That's all right. Every classical station has a different playlist that they're running through, that they like better. So and I have this like classical ear. So like I have all these opinions about like they messed up, and like da na na, that's whack, and
Yeah.
oh, this is so beautiful. And so like even this New Year's they do a whole countdown of the 100. Everyone votes for what their favorite classical music is, and they
Yeah.
rank them 100 through 1, and then it's always Beethoven 9 is number 1. That brings
I
in the new
remember
year
a
right
period over
before it
here.
says it. But
Yeah.
for like a whole week, they're just running the best of, and it's great. There's like not any talking or commercials. They're playing full symphonies or whatever, and
Yeah.
I just love it. I love
Mm.
classical music. I'm a true passionate fan. Um, I love flute classical music, violin classical music, piano music. I love definitely string quartets and chamber music.
Mhm.
And so if I got to be in that world, that would be great. I didn't, and that's okay. It's fun being an amateur that way too. It's whatever.
Yeah.
But I love that stuff. To be able to get paid to sound beautiful
Yeah.
seems to me to be so cool.
Mm.
Just
Mm.
lyrical, beautiful flute playing is not what I'm known for. So like
Can't
to be
do
able
it.
to pull
Means
that out and just be like,
yeah.
check this out, like it's so nice. That would have been
That's
great to do.
that's another point though, isn't it? That we get put in these boxes, and that's for whatever reason. We do it ourselves to an extent, but we are in these kind of boxes, and it's nice to just show that, hey, a musician can be a musician. They don't have to be, you know, all right, you're going to focus on one element of your technique to make sure that that's probably the thing that you are most focused on, but it doesn't mean to say that you can't go a little bit that way or this way, and I think that's
Oh,
what keeps it interesting.
definitely dabbling all over the place is
Dabbling, that's
quite
the word.
nice.
Yeah, yeah, and
Yeah, keep your toe in.
it's
You know.
got to help to open it up to more people and show that what's possible. It's yeah, I just wish there was more opportunities for that to happen, although I think that is happening now. People are there seems to be less segregation in what people offer in concerts and what people want to see. There seems to be more acceptance of
Well, I think at the end of the day, people want to be entertained, and
yes,
a lot of
yeah,
institutional knowledge
mm,
in the classical sphere has either left or
yeah,
dispersed,
yeah,
and people want to be entertained. How they
mm,
get entertained is
absolutely,
situational.
yeah,
But at a concert hall, at least in America, American symphony orchestras don't make their money through ticket sales.
mm,
None of them.
mm,
And so they never program stuff that people like I want to make sure I say this really carefully. I'm going to say it really bad. Like, they never program stuff people want to listen to, is what I wanted to say. But what I'm trying to say, what I
Mm.
mean is like, um, the music director thinks it ought to be this. And some dude's like, why don't you play that video game music? And they're like, no, 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 we don't play that. But maybe if they did, they would pack the house
Yeah.
or have a movie playing and play the score. But then, the big wigs are like, well, that's not proper. It's like, but it's entertaining and you're using the instruments. And so hopefully that's changing a little bit. There's definitely room for everything, I think, out there.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
yeah, who knows?
Yeah. No, I think it has to move in that direction, doesn't it? Because like you say, it becomes an untenable thing if it doesn't. And I totally agree. It comes down to entertainment. What do people want to hear? That should be what dictates what happens.
At the end of the day, that's all I'm trying to do is be entertaining. There's a lot of avenues to
Yeah.
be entertaining.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the time we do forget that that is it. It's there to be entertaining. That's its number one priority, or it should be. And when we get that right, you get it. That works, doesn't it? So what's next, Greg? You mentioned Project Trio. Have you got
Yeah.
anything lined up? Are you? Is there anything coming up? Because
We got all sorts of stuff, but everything is real slow moving with us. We've recorded a bit. We're kind of we've added a new member, so we have a saxophone player now. Daniel Berkey plays tenor sax instead of cello, and so now we found ourselves a little bit less classical than we were before, and I can kind of take a rhythm role. Kind of own it a little more. And this cat it just gigs jazz in the city here.
Okay.
And so, man, this guy can rip. Ooh, talk about improvisation. And it's a trip. He got a jazz education. I'm all like fake jazz, but got a classical education,
if you're fake jazz, I'm very fake jazz.
Oh, yeah. Oh, no. Oh, my jazz is fake, super fake. But but this guy is not. This guy can rip. And to the point where I'll be like blowing and he'll be like, F sharp. And I'll be like, he got me. No, I don't know. We get along great. And everything's very cool. And we're building new rep and we're writing new tunes and just kind of seeing how it goes. So what we've booked a lot of this spring is like education shows, assemblies, so we can just write new music. And again, this goes back to finding kind of safe spaces to perform. Playing in front of kids is a great place to play music you don't know very well.
Yes. Yeah. Because they
don't even treat you with respect anyway, so you can just lay whatever on them. And so we're doing that. We're writing this new music. I'm doing I got a couple of solo things. I'm going to a college in Texas. I'm going to Europe in a couple of weeks. I'm going to Germany. This duo, Gunisman and June. Do you know these dudes? They're like a comedy duo, like violin and like piano, classical. Yeah. So I'm going to go over there. Where I'm going to Dusseldorf, doing something with them.
Excellent.
And I'm going to the Mid-Atlantic Flute Festival.
Ooh, nice.
Which is like a small little flute convention on the eastern seaboard of the United States. So I haven't been to any big flute things since the pandemic, so that ought to be interesting. I'm gonna go try to set up somewhere and put out my case and play my Telemann and Bach. And
nice! You should. And somebody will go, "You can't do that. You're Greg Pattillo."
Yeah, no, I'll probably say I can't do that because you're not supposed to do that. But I'm gonna try anyway. Nice thing about flute, not a lot of equipment, so you could. Police come, you could leave pretty quick.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm up to. I don't know. I'm doing some summer stuff. I'm going to Brevard, which is like a summer music festival, and teaching there, and just staying busy, trying to put together these sounds. And I would like to do some recordings in the next year and make this book. So I don't know.
Excellent. Well, that will keep you busy enough, won't it?
Yeah, I guess.
That'll keep you busy enough.
If not this year, next year, man.
Yeah. Cool. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Greg. It's been just an absolute pleasure to chat to you.
Great,
And
nice
I think
hanging.
because
I know.
every
Well,
time I've heard you speak, I've thought, yeah, he's on my wavelength. We're on the same page when it comes to, innovation and music and all the rest of it. So I just really wanted to just chat to you about that and hear about what you're doing, because having somebody like yourself who's still, like I say, still innovating and finding stuff is just so inspirational for everybody, I think. So yeah, great to hear that you're still going, and we can expect lots of lovely things from you
oh yeah,
very
I got some good
soon.
tricks in my bag, so
Yeah,
watch
and
out.
I think I should just say for any flute players that are watching, the best place to see what Greg's up to is Greg's Patreon, because he's
Oh yeah.
always posting little bits on
Oh,
there. And I
I'm
have to
so
say,
bad at selling myself, man. But seriously, my Patreon.
yeah, you should,
You
because
know
it's
what? I was checking it out. I
brilliant.
have over 300 videos I've put up on Patreon
Exactly, and all that.
that like only the people that follow me know about.
All that knowledge, and I have to say what I struggle with is finding the time to go and look at it. And then that's why I was asking about your book, because I think I'm the type of person that's very old school, and if I have a book I will work through it, but
Yeah.
I
You know,
should.
that's good to hear. You know what I don't get ever is feedback.
Right, okay.
Ever. Like you communicated on my Patreon. I didn't even notice. That was like
Yeah.
a couple weeks ago. Because
Oh,
like no one ever write. I would just like put this stuff out into the
that's
void.
what's hard, isn't it? Yeah, how getting people to connect back. Yeah, it is tricky.
Let it,
But no, go on there, because it's such wonderful stuff. I think, even people who don't play the flute would find it interesting just to see how you're working this stuff out.
yeah, perhaps.
So,
I mean, I got so much more stuff I got to put up there, but it's like it's hard to condense little things. Man, content creation is what everyone's
oh,
talking
I
about.
know.
Blah 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 blah
It's
blah.
difficult. It's hard.
But
It's hard
it
work.
is, and I've
Yeah.
burned myself out
Yeah.
previously. Like
Right.
back when I used to put up a lot of YouTube videos, I
Yeah.
just fell off, and that
Yeah.
was
And because there's no
10
rules with
years.
it, you have to find your own kind of way, don't you? And like you say, a lot
Yeah,
of people get burnt out with it, and yeah, you just got to have other things and find your way and go, right, okay, that's what I'm doing. But yeah, no, you're every time the emails come through and I see you've another video, I'm like, oh yeah, that'll be
yeah. Well, I
something to
really
go
should
and
make
look at.
some more tomorrow. So watch out.
Brilliant. Brilliant. I look forward to it.
What should I make videos about?
Well, do you know, everything and everything. I would be interested in. I mean, all the stuff we've talked about. What else are you doing? What are you, ideas for like going out and finding places to play and how to engage with it? Anything you're doing. Sometimes that's what I've learned from doing content, is that the things that you don't think are interesting, that to you are just your everyday. Well, I'm going out and doing this. Somebody might find useful or interesting, or it might,
Hmm.
bring them something. So yeah, sometimes it's worth just sitting down and going, what have I done, or what am I doing that might just be worthwhile even just talking about, or shooting a little video about.
Hmm.
Because you never know. That's,
Interesting.
you know, yeah. But I do love just seeing your noodling and your ideas, because the thought process as well that you go through is really super interesting. As a teacher, that's quite interesting.
Yeah.
How
Cool.
am I thinking
Good to
about this?
hear.
Where am I getting to? And and the fact that you'll fully admit, well, I don't know where I'm going with this, but I'm gonna keep I'm gonna keep having a go. Um, that's so important.
Hmm.
So yeah,
All right. I'll fold all that in.
cool. Cool. Brilliant. Right. Thanks, Greg.
Right.
Um, enjoy the rest of your day. What's up for the rest of the day?
The Cleveland Orchestra is in town. They're playing Carnegie Hall tonight,
Okay.
and I got a bunch of friends in that orchestra, so I'm going to
Oh,
go
nice.
uptown and kind of high five them,
Lovely.
and then I won't go to the concert, but it'll be broadcast live on the radio, and I'll be listening. I'm looking forward
Excellent.
to it. They're playing Berg's Lyric Suite,
Ooh.
Schubert's Unfinished, and the Schubert Mass, which I don't
Oh,
know, but
wow. Yeah.
apparently it's very
Yeah.
beautiful.
Well, I'm a
But I
big fan
like
of
that Berg. Ooh, I like
yeah,
that. I like that
Schubert.
Viennese New School a lot.
Oh, nice. Yeah, well, I'm a big fan of Schubert's songs, of course, as a
Oh
singer.
yeah.
Yeah,
Oh
yeah.
yeah, sure.
That's cool. Yeah, yeah. Lovely. Well, thank you so much for chatting. I will put all the links to Greg's lovely content and what he's
Oh,
doing
thanks.
below, and go and check him out if you don't know him. Go and
Yeah,
check
right
him out,
on.
because he
Thanks.
deserves your attention.
Cool. Well, look, great chatting with you.
Thanks,
Until
Greg.
next time.
Cheers.